Thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. So go to YouTube, subscribe, comment, upvote. All of that good stuff will make us very happy. Also, join our Subtext community. We don't get info very often, but when we do, we put it there. Nothing else, just view it as a tip if you like the videos. I mean, it's not that much money. So I'm here with Derek Vandygriff for, honestly, it's our baseball season exit interview, really. How you doing, Derek?
Yeah, man, hanging in there. How about you?
I'm doing pretty well, pretty well. I'm in the process of willing Jacob Gonzalez to go to the Detroit Tigers. I'm trying to
Yeah,
speak that into existence.
yeah. What pick do y'all have going into this year?
3.
Three. Okay. Well, yeah. There's definitely a chance there. Yeah, Jacob's had a great year. Whoever ends up with him is going to be incredibly happy, especially the way he's progressed as a shortstop. Defensively more than anything, I think's what's really helped him. We all knew he could hit the ball, and but yeah, sitting right there at three, I think y'all definitely have a shot at him there. If y'all want him, then I think he's going to be there for the taking. With obviously Cruz and Skeens going 1 and 2, I'd be pretty shocked if that wasn't the case.
Yeah, and they've kind of the mocks I've seen out there is White Langford is the number
Yeah,
3 guy.
yeah, I've seen a lot of that too. Yeah,
Mm.
but look, Jake would be a good fit for y'all too, though. That'll kind of run the course of the Javi Baez contract, that he signed a couple years ago with Detroit, and let Jacob get down the minors, get ready for what I think he's got 3 years left on that contract. Baez does something like that. So yeah, go ahead and bring him in, put him down there, and he's a superstar waiting to happen in Detroit. That's for sure.
I
Won't happen.
can't remember what his name is, but it's Peyton something, the shortstop from Oklahoma last year.
Stovall.
Stovall, he's an A-ball. He's an A-ball with Detroit right
Yeah.
now. So I think that might be a detriment to them taking a high pick on Jacob Gonzalez because they already have, because that kid was legit.
Yeah. He's real good now. But one thing with Jacob is, especially early on in his career, this year was really the first time people thought he might actually stick to shortstop. Everybody thought he was going to end up at third base at the major league level because of just how much he was going to end up growing into his frames. He does have a pretty big frame for shortstop. So, just go ahead and draft him, throw him over on the hot corner, and you'll have Stovall and Gonzalez for the next decade, and y'all can run things with Torque over there at first base, and see if Casey Mize and those guys can get going at some point.
Yeah, and Justin Henry Malloy, and this is somebody from the Braves organization back in the day that you might be familiar
Uh
with.
huh. Yeah.
He's got 7 or 8 home runs this year, and he's hitting about 400 in AAA. So yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
he's having a good start.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you're on that kind of heater, you might as well just bring them up and ride it out. I want that hot bat in the majors than more than I do in the minors. So it's going to cool off at some point, so it might as well count for me.
That's right. Anyway, just looking back on this season, it's just been a weird year. And I mean, there's certain players like Calvin Harris and Jacob Gonzalez and Kemp Alderman that will forever be attached to Ole Miss baseball and be thought highly of. But
Uh huh.
it's just with all the injuries and everything, it's just been a weird year, right?
Yeah, it really has. I was thinking about that today, just how many pitching injuries we ended up having. I know we've talked about it over and over and over again throughout the year on here, but yeah, a lot of injuries on the pitching staff. You saw a lot of guys that you didn't think you would see a lot of coming into this year, but because of that, Morrell, him and Braden Jones pitched a heck of a lot out of the bullpen for us, which probably wasn't the plan going into the year. Pre Mallett's injury and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, kind of like you said though, those three guys, their legacy's kind of locked in Ole Miss baseball history forever with what they did with the run to Omaha. And quite frankly, they all three had really, really good years. Kemp Alderman maybe having the best year that nobody's talked about all year because of the way the season has gone. He's been absolutely incredible. So really happy for him. I know he's going to have a big time come draft time. Him and Gonzalez and Harris going to end up getting a shot too. So I think what's going to be really interesting though is seeing what maybe some of these guys, if some of them decide to come back, not those three, but somebody like Ethan Groff that has a year left, or would you be able to use NIL to possibly entice him to come back from the draft, instead of going pro, stuff like that, which stuff we don't really have the answers to because, we haven't really seen this yet. It kind of just started getting going a little bit last year. But maybe some things like that. If Groff's able to come back, if you're able to get some NIL money for him, maybe Leger, if you talk him into coming back. I know he's got another year of eligibility. He really came on as of late here in the latter part of the season. Played a really good third base and was really swinging it well. Those would be two really good bats. But it's going to be interesting, and we're all going to kind of learn it together, though, right? Nobody has these answers. Nobody knows what these kinds of things cost, and so you've just got to tap into your war chest, see what you can do, see if some of these guys can stick around for you to give you a little bit better foundation going into next year, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Because I think we have a really really good one on the mound with the freshmen that got all the experience they did this year. So that part's going to be really fun to watch. And then this off season draft guys and not even guys that are on your team, but also high school players too. There's some people that end up going a little later in drafts that are able to get a little bit of money because teams save slots for those kind of guys later on in the draft. So if you're able to work up enough NIL money for them too to get them to campus, so that's all going to be really interesting to see how it unfolds as the off season goes on.
Yeah, and we'll have another baseball show with you back on talking about post draft, how it stands, and who burned Ole Miss, who surprised Ole
Yeah.
Miss, things like that.
Things like
So
that.
what? Okay, we have Kramer, we have Will Furnace,
Yep.
Leger Groff. Uh,
Hopefully.
yeah, hopefully. Tell me other players that we might not be thinking about for next year.
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, Joe Dudelmark, right? I mean, he played a good bit for us this year before he hurt his shoulder diving into to home plate to walk off Georgia there at Swayze Field. So you hadn't seen him the last couple of weeks because of that shoulder injury or collarbone, whatever it ended up being. I don't think you'll see him this weekend either. I'm pretty sure you won't. But yeah, he was another impressive freshman we saw this year. He's got a lot of growing up to do as far as being able to recognize pitches coming out of the hand, laying off that slider, going away from him, and swing and miss. It's a lot like Kemp Alderman his freshman year. He really struggled with that when he first came in. Then he showed back up as a sophomore, and he was a lot better at it. And then obviously this year he was able to recognize it immediately. And if it was outside zone, he was able to let it go, and if it was over the plate, he hit it 550 something feet every single time. It was so you kind of expect that kind of progression with these freshmen going along. I think Udamark's going to be really good for us going forward. So uh, and then a guy we saw last weekend, Bo Gatlin. I'd kind of forgotten about him being on the team, but I thought he played pretty well for us. So but that's something that Mike and the guys have to figure out. All these young guys that didn't necessarily contribute this year when we struggled as much. Is that because they weren't ready but they were able to progress throughout the year and they're going to be ready for us next year, or do they need to go out and start filling in holes via the transfer portal and incoming guys from high school, whether it be high school, JUCO, whatever recruiting. But yeah, there's a lot of evaluation going to go on here in the next several weeks with Mike and the staff, and I'm sure they'll end up doing what's best for Ole Miss baseball. It's what they always do. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out.
We'll talk about the portal in just a second, but whenever you were going through your, talking about the returning players and things like that, who's
Mm-hmm.
somebody that we need to keep an eye on if they go to the Cape or playing summer ball? What are a couple of names that we need to pay attention to?
Yeah, I mean, the first one that comes to mind for me is Will Furnace, just because I've been so impressed with him his freshman year. He ended up hitting over 300 in SEC play as a true freshman. That's an incredible feat. And obviously with his pedigree with his dad at LSU and everything, But yeah, I think that he's one of the guys that can really perform when he goes out there. And Kramer's another one. I've always been impressed with him. He played a good bit for us last year, and he started getting regular at bats here towards the end of the year. This year, he's one of the guys that just hits the ball really hard, and if he's able to recognize the pitches and zero in on a single pitch in a single location, work counts and end up getting the pitch that he wants, he can really hit the ball hard, and we saw that a couple times already this year and several times last year. So that's one guy that I'm actually really excited about going into the summer league and all that, because I think he's a guy that can really take a jump for us next year.
All right, so let's talk about the transfer portal. We have not really seen what the transfer portal can do for baseball. We've seen it now in
Mm-hmm.
basketball. We've seen it now in football because we have the portal king over there.
Yeah,
Coach Yo's doing yeoman's work in the portal. This
yeah,
is going to be
that's
Mike
right.
Bianco's time because it has to be done. What should we pay
Yeah.
attention for in the transfer portal? What are we looking for?
Well, yeah, I think the biggest thing is what it's going to cost to actually play in the transfer portal. That's again something that people don't really know right now. Last year you had guys like Paul Skeens into LSU, Tommy White, and there's obviously talk about what they've spent in NIL wise building this roster down at LSU, and but that's the thing that you've got to figure out NIL wise. What do you have? What's available? And what's it going to cost for you to go in and play in those waters, right? And also what's going to be available. We right now we just don't know what's going to be available. You've got some guys hopping in already, but a lot of high level guys that are on these really good teams, they're not going to hop in until their season's done. Well, you still got conference tournaments, regionals, super regionals, and then Omaha. So right now we don't know what all's out there right now, but I can assure you that Ole Miss will be hot and heavy on probably some back end of the bullpen arms. There's talks of a kid from Kansas State that's really really good. Their closer of him getting in the portal. Now whether Ole Miss is going to be able to compete NIL wise or whatever to get him. I don't know, because I'm sure they have more pressing needs, as they're going to have to replace so many bats, and that's what you got to go look for right now. So we just talked about you return Kramer and Furnace and Utermark, and hopefully you can figure out a way to get Groff or Leger back, something like that. But you still got to have catcher, second base, shortstop, and at least two outfield spots probably. So there's a lot of holes to fill, and it's going to be really interesting to just see who ends up getting in the portal, and whether or not we're going to be able to get enough of those guys in, and also how you break down your NIL to get all of these guys, right? Like, do you want to go all in on two big bats and then use the rest to kind of fill it in, or do you want to spread it out a little more evenly and get a more consistent player at more positions? But that's all the stuff that Mike and the guys are going to have to figure out. And it's really the first time they're going to have to figure it out, because they were so far behind last year with the postseason run we ended up having. And then Mike, when he got back, ended up going to the Netherlands to coach Team USA and all that, right? So now they've got a little more time to kind of sit down, get a plan together, and I'm sure they're working on that and have been working on that for a little bit now, wondering what their strategy is going to be. And something else that needs to happen, really, the major league draft needs to get pulled up a little bit, or the transfer window for college baseball needs to get pushed back. um, the draft's not till July 9th. And these guys are going to start jumping in the portal and making decisions, and coaches have to make decisions before they even know whether some of their incoming guys from high school are going to end up jumping to the major leagues via the draft. And also a little bit with some of your current guys too. If some of them are going to end up going. Ole Miss kind of ran into this a little bit last year when Nick Pogue, the kid from Florida, the starting pitcher, we ended up picking up through the transfer portal. He just up and signs a undrafted free agent contract, with the Phillies, I think it was, out of nowhere. And so that was just one less spot that we had at that point. So, which I'm sure that's something that they'll probably end up working out at some point, whether they pull the draft up and get it off All-Star weekend, or if they push the transfer window back a little bit for baseball to give these coaches a little bit better idea of what their roster is going to look like. Because right now you're just kind of totally guessing.
Yeah, and Ole Miss traditionally, like at shortstop, they just assign a super shortstop as a freshman. He plays 3 years, and they just repeat the
Yeah,
cycle.
it goes
And
pro. Yeah.
yeah,
Uh,
and Jacob Gonzalez going to get drafted high in the first round. Who is that next
mhm.
super shortstop?
Yeah, I'm not real sure quite yet. I don't know if we go through the portal, if they have, a guy coming in through the high school ranks. Haven't delved into the recruiting quite yet, but that's definitely something I'm going to end up doing. So, but definitely interested to dive in, see what we end up having coming in. I'm sure they have a dude coming in through high schools. That's just what they always do at shortstops and catchers, and then they just figure out where to play them from there, right? That's just kind of their recruiting mo. You get catchers and shortstops. Shortstops usually the most athletic players on their high school teams anyway, and then you find somewhere to play them. So I'm sure they got some guys coming in. Like I said, I'll end up diving into that here in the weeks coming up, and see who that heir apparent's going to be, and see who's going to have that blonde hair next year.
Yeah, if they do that again. Well, I guess they need to go back. Anyway, thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. Every day is tomorrow on the show. We'll have, let's see, it's Thursday. It might, I think Tom maybe. We'll continue to talk about football as the last series gets underway as a Thursday series. So we'll talk
Yeah.
about that as well. So for Derek Vandygriff, I'm Stephen Willis. Thank you very much. We will see you next time. Thank you, Derek.
All right. Thanks. Hi, Toddy.
Hotty toddy.